Hey guys, I hope you are okay. So, this is me. I just decided to make a video on what I had learned about MERN so far. So, MERN is basically the MongoDB Express, React, and then Node.js. So, if you are following along with this is just me trying to explain to myself and also to anyone who is watching this what I learned in this project. So the first thing is we are going to set up our project, and by that I made a directory here which is called man, and I'll be storing all my files inside there. So the first thing is I'm going to create a server, and inside this server I'm assuming is where we are going to store our backend code, right? So again, maybe if you notice that I've done any mistake, you can reach out to me and you can tell me, hey, I watched your video and you made a mistake at a particular point, and this is the mistake you made, right? Because we are learning and we are if not crawling, we are making the baby steps here, right? Yeah, so I made this. So I'm assuming that here is where I'm going to store all my backend code, and then also I can make another one which is maybe front end, and I'm assuming that all my front end code will go there. So as you can see, we have two files, the front end and also the server, and then I'm assuming that all my code for the server, we are going to store it inside the server directory. So let me cd inside the server, and then now inside the server, here is where we are going to install our Express framework or our Express application. This is because on the backend we will be using Express. So Express is the one which is going to serve as our server. So after that, I'm going to do what? I'm going to do npm init, and then I'll do -y. So if I do -y, it's going to automatically create the package.json file. But if I don't do this -y, I'm going to have to manually enter those values myself. But for this, I just need to do -y, and it's going to automatically create these entities for me, whereby, for example, the name, we have server and the version and all that, and then as you can see, by default it's going to create an entry point which is called the index.js, and this will be our index, our entry point, or in other words, this is where we are going to write our server-side code or our backend code. It will be executed from this will be our entry point. So but for me, I need to rename it to server.js so that I can have a consistent naming. For example, I use the directory server, so maybe I can also change that one. So to do that, let's open the package.json, then inside there we can start making some changes. Now for example, inside this main, which is our entry, I'm just going to rename it to server.js. There are also a couple of changes we are going to make here, not changes but additional files or additional lines we are going to add here, which are going to assist us when we are running our project. And then also I will also need to add something else here. So let me do this. I'm gonna add a type which will be module, and the reason we are doing this is because we need to use the ECMAScript file importation style, and instead of using the require, inside here we will be using the import. So for example, we can import Express from the Express module which we are going to install, or rather the Express dependency. So after you do this sorry for that, after you do this, inside here, as I said, we are going to add some lines of code. I'm going to add dev, and this is the command which I'll be using to run the script in development mode. Then I'm going to use a tool or a dependency called nodemon, and then I'll run my entry file, which is server.js. Then I'm also going to add for production mode, I'm going to do start. So when we run the start command with the npm command, for example npm run start, then I'll be running my application in production mode. So here I'm going to use node, then I'll run server.js. So if you don't modify this server.js, and if inside your file it's index.js, then I guess now we are going to use index.js inside here. So after that, This one is good to go. We have already added this type whereby we are going to use import instead of require, and then we have done these files inside here which are going to assist us to run our application, or rather our express application. So now since we have this, we can save. I hope it doesn't have any error. Then let me open a new terminal here. Then I can do ls. We have this package.json. So now the next thing is I'm going to create our server.js. So let me do that, server.js. Then I can maybe make this one a little bit bigger. Then now you see we have the server.js. Let me open that file. Then I'll open with this, have server.js. So now inside this server here is where we are going to create our express application, but we cannot create the express application before we can download the express dependencies and a couple of others. So inside here, I'm still inside the server directory inside here. So I'm going to do npm install. I'm going to do install CRS. I'm also going to install express and node. Alright, so these are the dependencies which we are going to use to run our application and also to create our application. So it might take some time while installing, or I don't know, this will be dependent, and I think it's done. Is it done? I think my internet is okay. It's done. So after it's done, when we go back to package.json here, then you see it is updated, and then inside the dependencies we have CRS, we have express and node, but again we are missing one. We realize that we have not installed node.mon, so we are going to go back there and I'm going to install. So npm install node.mon, and there is this -d which was being used. So I really don't know what that -d was, so I'm going to do npm maybe -h, and then I'm going to look at, I can't say -d, but okay, maybe I'll have to Google that later. But we have that command, and so this basically is just the command which you're going to use to install node.mon. So once node.mon is installed, we are going to see if we can run our application on development mode once we update our code inside here. So since we already have express and node and CRS, which is for cross origin resource sharing, then I hope now we can create, or we can start our express application. So the first thing will be to import. So remember, we already installed, or rather we use the type to be module, whereby we will be importing all our dependencies and all our modules using the ECMAScript 5 import statement, right? So now let's go here and import express. So we are going to import express from express, and then also we installed CRS, so we're going to import CRS from CRS, and then yeah. So now since we have that, now we can create our first instance of express, and now we have our express framework inside our application. So basically we have created our server-side application whereby we are going to run our backend code. So now after that, we need to make this application available on our port, so that if we go to that link, or if we go to that particular port, then we will have our services available from there. So we are going to use the application.listen, and then we are going to listen on a particular port. So this is a variable which you're going to create, and we will assign a particular port to it. Then we are going to have a callback function, and it will take in maybe a request and a response, and it will be an anonymous function, and then we can display some message, so that once we run this application, we will be getting an application on our console. So you can see we use console.log. So maybe later you're going to see the difference between console, and when you start diving deeper into the response module or the response object, then you will see the difference between console.log. We'll also see the use of console.dir, which will basically display what is available inside a particular object, for example. But we are going to see that maybe later as we continue with this one. So in our case, we want to do console.log, and then now we can do for example, app running on port. Now for example, running on, instead of port you can do local hosts, and then now we can do, so inside here we will fetch our port, so port like that. But again, you realize that we have not defined the port, so maybe up here you can do consts, and then you do port, and then you can give it a port of 3000. So anytime we navigate to this port, then our application will be available in that particular port, right, inside the local host, of course. So I hope this one is ready. I think I've not left out anything. Import CRS from CRS. I don't know why this one is this way, so maybe we did not install CRS, but I think we did install CRS. I think we do have CRS. Okay, or maybe we don't have it, so let's see. Alright, or maybe it's because we have not used it, so maybe let's try and use it. .use CRS. Alright, I don't know, but maybe if we get the error, import CRS from CRS, I think this should be working. Anyway, if we get an error, then of course we are going to debug. I don't want to take a lot of time on that one. If it doesn't work, then I'm just going to get away with it, because I'm still learning, and later on I'm just going to grasp it for sure. So since we used a script of dev so that you can run our application on dev mode, this is the command which we'll be using so that you can see if our application is running well, right? So when I run that, then you can see that of course it has crashed, and it says that app is not defined, of course. So we are going to do const app is equals to express, then yeah, so now it's running well. So you can see we have a message which is app running on localhost 3000, and that's because inside our application we said that once we run the application on that particular port, then this is the message which should be displayed inside our console, on our console. So this will be our console, and then of course you can see that we get the message here, and this is just a signal that our application is running well. So since we have that, we can also install, there is another module which I saw, the module is more about security, and it will install more secure headers inside our application so that all those requests to the server will have secure or more security headers which are already pre-pended in them. So we have npm install, then we are going to install helmet, and yeah, this is the particular middleware or module which we will be using for that. So now inside here we can do import helmet from helmet. Then now of course we can use that, we can use helmet right there, and then this one is going to add those security headers on all our requests so that our application will be more secure. So of course security starts as early as here. It will start as early as when we are defining our project. So now we have this, and I think we are good to go. Let's see if the application is still running. Yeah, so our application is still running here. Yeah, our application is still running. So the next thing I needed to look at is I looked at methods which are related to this. So once we create our application, there are methods which will just be available by default, and so I needed to play around with a couple of them So here I can do application methods, and the first one will be the app.local. So anytime I say application, I'll just be referring to this app. So the first one is app.locals, and basically what this one does is it will store the application level variables that that persist throughout the application's lifecycle, right? And these variables, of course, they will be available on all the templates which are rendered by this application, and maybe later on we will be seeing methods which will enable us to render those templates in this express in our express application here. So now we have that. So maybe we can do an example of this, the application.locals method. So we can define, so you can start by defining a local variable using the app.locals. Then maybe I can do title, then I can give it a value, maybe my express app. Then I can do another one, maybe I can just do two app.locals, and then this one I can give it version, and then I give it a version 1.0 maybe, or 1.00, so that it looks more professional. So after you do this, so you can do app.get. This is another method, and this method can be used to get all the application properties inside we have the application property tables, which has a couple of these properties, or we can use it to get a route. So a route is basically inside the web browser, we'll be using the base URL. For example, in our case, it's localhost, then a route. So you can use app.get to get content inside that route. And here is where maybe the response object is going to come in, but we are going to look at that later on. So for now, we just need it so that we can get going and so that we can understand what we are trying to do. So we are going to do app.get, and then inside the root, inside the root there, which is this root directory, we are going to have an arrow function which takes in request and response. And then now here we are going to define something. So anytime we navigate to this directory here, we need to do something like what? We need to do something like response.send, and this one is just a message which will be sent to our web page anytime we navigate to that. So you can do response.send, and then you can do I am in the home page right there. So I am in the home page, yeah, like that. So I'm hoping that anytime inside the browser when I go, I'm not recording my browser for now, but if I navigate to that, then I should get this. So maybe I can try and use CURL. I don't know if CURL, then you can use, the port is 3000, then I can remove this. Yes, so now you see you get the message, I am in the home page. So still, if you go to the browser and visit this page, you're going to get this response, right? This is the response you're going to get, I am in the home page. So that is app.get, and as I said, you can use app.get to get contents from a particular route, and this is the route. In our case, we have used the root route, for example this one, and then anytime we navigate there, we are going to get this message. So I was still inside the app.locals.version. Still, we can do anytime when we go to here, we can try and do console maybe .log, and we will be getting creative with all these methods. For now, we are just trying to learn and understand. Can do app.locals.title, and then anytime now we go to this route here inside our console here, we'll be getting that message, and I believe so let's try to use, I don't know if we use CURL we're going to get it, but let's see. All right, let's try again. Yes, so you see, anytime when we go to this route, which is the home directory route here, this route here. So I've used CURL because I'm not recording my browser right now. So if I go to that page and then this route, then inside the console I also expect a message, just like we expect a message to be sent in that browser using the response. So still inside my console here where I'm running, I also expect a message, and this is the message, which is my Express app, which we have defined inside here. So that is the first method which I learned, which was the app.locals method. And I also realized that later on they will be used somewhere else, which we are going to touch on. So if you follow along, you will see where we are going to use these local variables, especially for example when we are trying to render an application. So that application might, or a page, we might want to render a page maybe, and then we give particular details, and those details we might have saved them inside here. So before I also continue inside the port, I also realized that we can have a configuration file here. So let me create a .env file, and of course you should never pass this to GitHub or anywhere else, because this one will contain your configuration details. For example, API keys, it will contain a lot of details inside there. So inside here is where we are going to store just some of the details which we'll be needing inside the application. And to showcase that, I am going to open the .env file right there, and then now inside here, now I'm going to define our port is equals to 3000, and 3000. Then now we can access this port using this line of code here. So we can do constant port is equals to 3000. So instead of that, we can do process.env.port, and then now or port 3001 if this port is not available. So inside our env file, we use port like that. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to go to our env file, and then it's going to look for a variable which is called port, and then it will fetch it. So all this one will be replaced by 3000, and then if that port is not available, then we can use port 3001. And hoping that when you are following this, you understand what this one means in JavaScript, and this is just ORIN. So basically, which means if this is not available, then you can use this, right? Either one of them, we are going to get true. To get a true, and then that port will be available, and then we pass that port inside here. Now the next thing was the application.mount path, and the description of this is, okay, so let me just do here the application.mount path. And basically what this one does is it will contain the path on which a sub application was mounted to the parent application. So I'm assuming that this app is the parent application, so we can create a sub application, right? So we can do constant, and then I can do maybe admin is equals to express, and then I'll be using this one as the sub application. Then now I can go ahead and then I can maybe try to get a route using the admin sub application. So here, let me do admin.get, and then I'm going to get the home. Then I can do the callback function here, the request and the send, the request and the response. And then now I can do some definitions here, so that anytime we go to this route here, then I can do response.send, and then I can do UR in the admin directory or page. Let me do page here in the admin page like that. And then now instead of just using this one, so let's see. So if you need to mount this particular path, then we are going to use app, because app is the parent application, right? So we want to mount this path somewhere using our our parent application. So to do that, we're going to use app.use. So you're going to do app.use like that, and then inside here I'm going to specify a path like admin, and then I'm going to use that particular function or middleware. So I'm going to do admin, right? So what will happen here is the application is going to mount the contents of this admin, which is this one. It's going to mount it to this particular path. So anytime we go to this path, then this one will be executed, and we can try that. So to try, I'm going to use curl, then I'm going to go to /admin, then I cannot get this. Okay, so what did I forget? App.this, we're going to do that. Response.send, you are in the admin page. Okay, so with this one, what we are doing with this one is we are mounting the admin sub application to this path, so that anytime we access this path, we are going to get this, right? So okay, let me try something else. So let me get here and see. So anytime we log in there, I can do console.log, and then I can do app.mount path, and this one should return admin because we have mounted this sub application to the main parent application here using this path. So let's try and see. Let me use URL and then fail to connect to this one. Okay, let me use URL and then I go back here, and I should be getting maybe something like /admin. So I don't know. So let's see. App. Okay, let me remove this first. And then I try to come here. Okay. Oh, the application is running on port 3001. Alright. This should be port 3001. Okay, so now you can see it has run and you are in the admin page. So of course those little changes matters. So anytime you do a change, you better keep it at the back of your head, because sometimes it might be difficult to troubleshoot. So when we run, now you see we get this particular we get this one, this / here. So the / is originating from maybe here, because what we have done is we are trying to get like the mount path of the particular application. So if I used admin instead of app, then I should get /admin, right? So this one should give me something like /admin here. Yeah, so if I go to my terminal here, use URL to run, then I come back to my console, then you see I'm getting /admin. And so basically what app.mount path returns is it will contain the path on which a sub application was mounted on the parent app. So when you use app here, we have not mounted our main application here on any other main application, so it will return the /. That's how you are getting this. But when you use admin like this, then we are going to get /admin. So we have to access that resource maybe at that, and then inside here you see you are getting /admin. Then the third one I looked at was the application.router. And basically what application.router does is it is just an instance that will handle all the routes, right? So I think you understand that by routes we mean these directories here, which will just specify different content on those different routes. So the express router is just an instance that will handle all these routes here, for example. And then normally I don't think you need to access this directly as an, like I don't think you need to access this one directly. That is because Express handles the routing internally, right? So I don't want to get into so many details, so let's go ahead and do an example. So I'm going to get rid of all this, and then I'm doing app.router, and then now I'm going to, so we have already defined our application here. So yeah, we already have our application here. Then so let's try to use an example, right? So we can have app.get, then you're going to use that directory, then you're going to do request and response. Then after that you're going to do this. So I can do response.send, and then what am I sending? I'm sending maybe homepage, and then after I do this, then I can do console.log, maybe console.log app.router, right? So once we run this application, let's see what we are going to get. So let me just do that. We have already removed that. Okay, so we get this homepage, and then inside here we get this. What is this? We get something like this. So we are just returning the function, which is a router. And I think also another use case I saw is that we can have here maybe constant router is equals to app.router, and then here instead of using app.get, I can do router.get. So let's see if our server is still running. Yeah, our server is still running well, and then if I run that, you see it's still going to get that information from that particular route. So here there's something added here, so let's get rid of this. Yeah, so that is basically all on app.router, and we say that it's the express router is just an instance which is going to handle all the routes inside here. So the next one was I looked at events. And I use one example on this one. So we mounted a sub application on the main application, right? So one particular event which I saw was the mounting, right? So after we mount that sub application to the main application, we have an event. The event is mounting. So now we can do, since we have admin and we have app here, right? So we can do admin, because this one is the sub app, then on, right? So it seems that we'll be using the on to check for any events. So on mount, then you can also run a function which will be this. It will be an arrow function, and then you are going to do, you can do something like let's do some console.log, so that anytime this admin sub application is mounted onto the main application, then we can do a message like admin sub hub mounted on the main app, something like that, right? Then for this to be true, we have to mount that application. We have to mount like the admin on the main app. So we are going to do app.use admin like this. I think this one is good. We are good to go. So we are going to use, so since we use this statement here to mount the admin sub application here onto this route, then we expect that anytime we run this application, we are going to get this message onto our console, that message sub application has been mounted on the main application. So checking on this, you can see that we have admin sub application has been mounted on the main application. This message, we are getting this message because we are on our console here. So That is because when we mount this, then the mount event has been triggered, and once it's triggered, then we are going to run this callback function here. So these functions here, we will be referring to them as callback functions, and these ones will depend on this value will depend on the method which we are using here. So that is all on events, and basically they are just emitted when the sub application is, for example, when the sub application is mounted onto the parent app. We can also do something. We can also do this admin.onMount. Instead of using this, we can pass in like the parent here, and then you can do console dot, instead of console.log, we can do console.dir parent, and then in here you will see it just logs like the directory of all the properties of the parent, right? So you can see all of them inside here. Everything is inside here. So that is also one functionality of the console.dir. It will show like, I don't know if this one is the same with the dir in Python, which just shows all the methods which are inside a particular structure or a particular object. Maybe it's the same, maybe it's not, but I think it is. I'm learning. So the other one was the application.all, and basically what application.all does is it will handle like all the HTTP methods. The HTTP methods are like get, post, put, etc, right? Delete, options. So for a specific path, it will check all of them. So, and one use case I saw was it is useful for applying middleware or handling requests regardless of the HTTP method. So let me get rid of this, and then here I'm going to do app.all. So the method or the syntax is app.all, and then inside here it takes in a route, and then it will run this callback function here, for example, on all those routes inside there, right? So for example, you can do /API then /*, and it's going to run like it's going to handle all the HTTP requests on this path, anything API, anything with this path, right? So the asterisk could just mean that like all the paths inside this particular path here, then it's going to run this function on them. So in our case here, we can do just a simple thing like console.log, then accessing maybe the API session, accessing the API session there. Then we can do next, and basically what this next does is it will go to the next path if it's available. So it will, once it accesses a path, it will just do console.log accessing the API session, then we can do next to the next path. So if we had this path configured inside our application, then we would be able to maybe to see this message. But for now, that is the syntax, and we know the functionality. Application.all is just going to handle all the HTTP methods on a particular path or on a particular route which you are going to give, and this one is it will be useful. For example, if you need to check, like for example, if a particular path needs you to be logged in, then you can do something like this, right? So it will check regardless of the method, and then it will ensure that maybe you are logged in before you can access the services. So we are going to be getting creative with these methods as we continue. So we have the app.delete. So the app.delete, basically what it's going to do is it will handle all the HTTP delete requests, right? So it is just used to delete resources. So for example, you can do app.delete, then you can pass in a particular path here. For example, if you wanted to delete the API path, then we can do, after that path has been deleted, we can do like a message like path deleted, right? In here we can do path deleted, or you can still decide to get creative with this. path deleted, right? For example, something like that. So if you wanted to delete, for example, let's say you wanted to delete a user inside this path here. Let's say we do this ID, then you wanted to delete a user with a particular ID, right? So instead of doing this, and of course we can get rid of this next here, so we can do something like we can have constant user ID, and then we are going to check, we have to capture it. So we are going to capture it from request.params.id, and this is the request object. So request.params is going to check the parameters which have been appended to the base URL, and then now it's going to this specific value, which is the ID here. So once we have captured that, we can do, maybe you can just write a delete logic, for example, response.send. So it's going to send some message to the browser, right? Whatever you can see. And then you can do maybe something like user, and then we mention that user which has been deleted, and it will be easier because we have already captured that user inside a variable which is user ID. Then we can do like deleted successfully, like that, right? And then now we can say, so I don't know if this one is actually going to work. So let me try to use this CURL. So I can do CURL, then I pass in a method here which is delete. Then you have specified a path which is API, right? And then you can specify a user like 1. Yeah, so now you see we are getting the message user 1 deleted successfully, right? So we are going to use this one. This can be any method which we try to play around with, but with these methods, once we get to requests, we will be playing a lot with these ones. We'll be playing a lot with these methods, and we'll get to understand a deeper level of what they do. So for now, I was just trying to play with the application, some methods which some useful methods which come around with this application, so that I can like get comfortable with them. So I also have another one like the app.disable here. So this method, it will set a boolean application setting to false, right? So if you wanted to disable a property which belongs to this application, because I saw that there is a table which contains a couple of them, then we pass in that property name inside here, then we set it to false. And it's also the same as doing app.set. Remember this one, the set keyword, the set method, we can use it to set maybe a particular key. Let me just call it a key or an object or anything to false, right? So instead of doing this, then you can just use app.disable, and then you pass in key alone. Like we don't have to pass this false, right? Because it will do the same work. So disable is going to set this to false, and this one is also the same to app.enable, and enable is going to set this value to true, right? So still you can do app.set this value to true, but instead of doing that, you can just do app.enable this one. So after that, you can also use app.disabled, and then you're going to check if that particular value is true or false, right? So for example, if key at the value of false, then app.disabled is going to return true. Yeah, so at least for now we know how it works, and we'll be having better use cases later on. But for now, we can of course go and access like the properties which are inside here, then you can try to play around with it. But for now, let's just keep it on the low. So we have app.enable. We can also have app.enabled here. They just play the same role, right? I also saw another one which was the app.engine. Yeah, and so the app.engine is just going to register a template engine for rendering the views with like the specific file extensions. So for example, if you wanted to use a different engine, right, to view all the HTML files, then you are going to use the app.engine. Then it takes in, I think it takes in 2 arguments. For example, you can have the file extension, which is the first argument here. For example, let's do this. Let me get rid of this. So it will be something like app.engine, and then the first value here will be the file extension, for example HTML. And then now here we can do like the engine which you want to use. For example, you can do, if you want to use, there is one which was called EJS. Yeah, require EJS dot maybe render file. Yeah, something like that. Then you can also set, like, you can do app.set. Then what are we setting here? Here we set the view engine, which is a property inside this this application. You can set it to HTML or something like that. But we just know this one is basically registering the EJS engine for .html file. So if you have index.html, then it will be run by this particular engine which you're going to specify inside your application. Then we have the app.get. The app.get, just, we have seen its use. It's just going to get resources from a particular route, right? So anytime you try to request services from a server, then it will use the .get method, and then it's going to return them to you. So basically it is just going to handle like all the HTTP GET request, and it can also retrieve the application settings when maybe used with one, or of course with one argument. Then you have the application.listen, which is right here, and this one is just going to bind, right? It's going to bind and it's going to listen for connections on a specified port, right? On a specified port here. And I think we can also add a host, for example local hosts. I think this one is valid. When I do that, when I come back here, my server should still be running. Okay. So you have an error. The error is caused by these two, so let me get rid of them, and then yeah, my server is now running again. Well, so the host is this, the local host, and this one is the port, right? And then now these ones will be the routes which we are specifying there. So suppose we use the so basically that is how you use it. Then I also saw that if you don't specify this port, or if you specify a 0, then the operating system is going to assign you just any open port which you're going to use. But we have already defined our port inside here, and you can see the value in here. So the value is either 3000, because inside the .env we specified the 3000, or 3001 if that port is not available. Then we also have the application.method. Let me do it here like that, and this method here is just going to stand for all those HTTP methods which you are going to use to request files, to edit files, or to edit resources like that. What I mean by that is get, post, put, options, all those, and somehow they just work the same way. Like the app.get, we are going to pass in a route, and then you are going to call it to pass in a callback function, and that callback function will be called depending on that route, right? So for example, you might want to do like some JSON. We want to send some JSON files to the server. Then for example, we can use app.post, and then we pass in a route, and then inside the callback function we just pass in like the JSON values which you want to send to the server, and then we can also pass them through the request.body, something like that. So you also have the app.param like this. So the app.param is just going to add a callback trigger to route parameters, right? And it is useful for pre-processing the parameters right there. So This one we will play around with it once we have, like, when we are building like the application, right? Yeah, when you are building the application, or once we get to the request object, because the request object will have, like, I think it will be suitable once we get to the request object. We can now play around with this, because we can try sending and getting some inputs from the request, and then we just try to play around with this one. But for now, we can, or should I just show an example? Let's do one. So you can use like app.param like this, and then you can pass in a user ID, then you can pass in request, you can pass in responses, you can pass in maybe the next one, which is then, I think it's the next part, and then we can do like the user ID inside there. And then this one is the function, which is the callback function. Then you can do, let's try to pretend like we are trying to fetch a user from the database. So we have request.user is equals to, we pass in a JSON here where we have the ID is the user ID and the name. For example, will be John Doe. Right, then I pass in the next. So it's just going to check the user ID here. So if the user ID is the same as this user, then maybe we can try to fetch that from the database. But here we're just pretending we are just pretending to fetch some user from the database. That's why I didn't want to do this one now. We can do it maybe when you are working with request, right? Request, and so after we work with request, after we work with responses and maybe the routes, then we will do these examples here and there before we can like get into building the application. Then we also have the application.path. So the application.path, for example, here we have the app.path, and what this one does is it is going to return the canonical path of the application, and it will return that path as a string, right? So we already have like this one, we already have like app.use this route, which is the /admin, and then we pass in the admin sub application there. So we might want to get that path, right? So we can do console.log, and we just want to see that path printed inside our console. So we can do console.log and then admin.path like that. So this one should return /admin, right? So basically what this method is going to do is it is going to return that canonical path of that particular application. In our case, it's admin, and then it's going to return it as a string, right? So when I run this, then you see we are getting that part here /admin, and you are getting it as a string. So we also have app.post, and this one is basically going to do it's going to run a HTTP post request, or rather it handles the HTTP post request. So I'm talking about the app.post, like this app.post, and this one is going to handle the HTTP post request, and typically it is used to create new resources. So anytime, for example, if you create a new user sign up, a new user profile, this is basically what is used. We just use the app.post, and then you create that user inside the database. We also have the app.put, and this one will take in a path, I think, and then it will also take in a callback function here, a callback function. And then because it is post, for example, you might try to append maybe something like an ID to uniquely identify that user, like that, right? So that you can uniquely identify that particular user using the ID, and then this callback function will just be sending their details into the server, and then you can create their profile. Yeah, so I think the remaining ones I'm going to do in another video. This one is, I think it's already an hour. Yeah, but there is one which we've been using and I've not described or explained it. We have the app.use, and then the app.use, it will mount a middleware, or it will mount a couple of middleware functions or sub applications. In our case, you can see we mounted this sub application into this at a specified path, right? So that is the basic use of app.use. So it is just going to mount a middleware function, or this, what we call this, a sub application inside a just the specified path. So basically, I think it can take two arguments. Inside here it has taken one argument, and I think if you don't provide any path here, for example CORS, then this middleware function will be applied to all paths, right? Yeah, but inside this one, the admin function here, the admin middleware function, or the admin sub application in our case, is going to be applied to this particular path. But the helmet will be used on all paths because we did not specify a path there, right? Then you also have another one. We have the app.set. We have already checked and used the app.set, whereby the app.set is going to take in the application property, an application property name, and a value, and then it will bind them. It will bind that value to that particular property. Then we also have the app.route, and this one is the last one. This one is the last one, and then I'll make another video maybe trying to showcase the request, because that is the next thing I'm going to do, request. And then after request I'll do responses, then after responses maybe routes, then after routes I'll do error handling, and then after error handling I'll know from there what I'm going to do next. Yeah, so the app.route, it's just, oh, I did this one. I did app.route when I was starting. It's just going to return an instance of a single route, which you can then maybe chain those HTTP method handlers to. But we'll be looking at those ones once we get comfortable with request and also responses. So for me, that is it. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope you guys will just join me in this journey. We learn together if you really want to learn the MERN stack. And yeah, if you are pro, if you are a seasoned MERN stack user, you can always correct me respectively, of course, and you can give me insights, you can give me ideas, you can give me advice on how to navigate through this one. So thank you guys. Yeah, see you in the next one.